Today, I am speaking with Mike Cecot-Scherer. Mike was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and I got an email about 4 or 5 days ago saying, you really need to talk to this guy. And he gave me a link to a website, and I went and looked at that, and I decided, yeah, I really need to talk to this guy. So we're talking to Mike Cecot-Scherer, and my information is that you design tents for a living. Is that what you do?
Yep, that's the majority of what I do. I do freelance product design, but I seem to have found myself specializing in tents for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 245 so far that I've worked on, lifetime total.
245 different designs for tents.
Yeah.
How did you get into designing tents? You say that you kind of discovered your niche. I guess you were doing something else before that?
Long ago, I was working retail at the Marmot Mountain Works Berkeley store. And it's a very specialized store. They really paid attention to their customers. So everyone there was very expert at gear, which went along with kind of my natural tendencies, being sort of a physical science guy and an outdoors person. So we were selling a tent that Sierra Designs was making, and it was driving us crazy because it was too short. So long story short, I went to Sierra Designs and said, "Hey, you need to fix this. I know you need to fix this. How about you let me fix it for you?" And he hired me, and that's how I started. That was the Stretch Domicile, Sierra Designs Stretch Domicile, way back in the day, 1985.
Back in the day when I was camping as a Boy Scout, what we did was he had this heavy canvas pup tent, and it was 2-people tent, and so each person carried one half of it, and along with a 3-section. I'm hearing a noise back there. Is there a fan? Okay. Anyway, there was a 3-section pole and some guy wires or guy ropes.
Yes.
And the whole contraption weighed somewhere north of 20 pounds altogether. And that didn't include a ground cloth. So you basically had to do something or another across the ground if you didn't want to be exposed directly to that. So my experience with tent camping, I guess, is somewhat dated.
And unpleasant, perhaps. It sounds like.
Now, we did do some snow camping in that kind of arrangement. But at any rate, that's my experience with tenting, and I'm not a big outdoorsy kind of guy, and so you were wondering kind of why I was even interested in what you had to sell, and I think that your products would be a very good niche product for preppers, and we went back a little bit back and forth a little bit on preppers, and you said that, well, okay, you hadn't really thought much about marketing to preppers, but I think you may be missing out on a nice market there. But anyway, we'll get into some of the designs that you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, why the big deal about tent design? I mean, I described, my experience with a tent was basically 2 poles and an overlapping canvas thing that weighed a ton, and if it rained and you touched the inside, leaking.
I remember those days. I didn't actually use those types of tents, but I've heard the stories, and I think you can still get those tents too, actually.
Really? Okay. So how was your tent design an improvement over that. I guess it wouldn't be hard, would it?
Well, no, that's true. What I was doing, at the time, the town I lived in was really kind of a hotbed of backpacking and mountaineering. So we never saw those tents. We only saw nylon tents, 70 denier fabrics. They were 6, 7, 8 pound tents typically, and that was compact, and they were, this big and that big around. That's compact back then. And they would have often funky poles, I would say, yeah. And it cost way too much. But a lot of the real problems that were happening with your tent weren't really happening with the ones that I was using. But other problems, which you don't have to go into because nobody has that problem anymore, like the polyurethanes would stink and peel off, and lots of things. But also just buying them. I was a kid wanting to have gear, and a lot of times I found myself making it because I could buy the coated fabrics for very reasonable prices and sew them up myself. So nowadays, of course, tent design is just a huge thing. I mean, so many ins and outs and details, and it's all working pretty well, I have to say. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of good stuff out there. So
what caused you to decide that you want to go in and compete with that?
Well, it's a funny way to put that because, of course, my main business is working for tent companies. And so putting this tent up on Kickstarter, I went to, I would say, extravagant lengths to make sure that this was not something that any of my clients, which means no major brand, could make this thing. Its cost would have been literally over $1,000. But also, I wanted it to be an experiment. And so I think they could all respect this. The idea is that they are actually quite constrained as to what they can offer the customer at this point in time. It's really, 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 really tight. Both their brand and their customer are saying things like, the only thing we're going to look at when we buy a tent is we're going to look at this chart and we're going to look at this weight, and that's it. And then the cost. Weight and cost, weight and cost. And so without any pushback in the marketplace, which requires actual talking about these things, you find that, lo and behold, things like adjustable stake loops. So, we've all had stakes that won't go in.
Oh, yeah.
Real easy to fix. We just put them on just the teeniest little plastic part, and suddenly you've got an adjustable cord, and your loop can get close or get far away. Weighs almost nothing, costs almost nothing, always axed at the end when you've got a product coming out, because you're always up against it for price and weight at the very end, and they just say, well, we can't do it if nobody else does it. Customers aren't asking for it. So you end up with a huge number of things you could do and only a few things that actually get done.
So this was a matter of frustration on your part?
That's maybe one way to put it, because as a designer, of course I want to make lots of new good things and talk about them. And the talk is going down pretty dramatically in the industry. But also, there's another layer going on here, and that is that the people that are actually making the decisions about what to make and sell are getting further and further and further away from the actual customers and talking to them. So when you get this kind of divorced mindset going on up here, making the product, it kind of feeds a lowest common denominator thing. So they're really just as hamstrung as the designers are. And somehow breaking that mold at some point has to happen. I mean, it's just inevitable that some strange wrinkle is going to happen, and now we'll suddenly see many more things available. but it hasn't happened yet. So this is my way of pushing it.
Now, yeah, so you're pushing this via a Kickstarter.
I am. Nothing talks louder than money. So.
And this is not your first Kickstarter, right?
No, I did an amusing little latrine trowel. So, if you're on a hike, backcountry or not, overnight or not, even a day hike, if you need to poop in the woods, you want to do a leave no trace, dig your cat hole, poop in it, and cover it. And it turns out that market is I would say pretty underserved. As somebody who likes lightweight equipment that's designed well, I was looking at just a bunch of really heavy, just almost offensive designs. I mean, they're just so bad that you just go, no, I'm not putting that in my pack.
I remember the old trenching tool is, a wooden handle on this folding thing, and it weighed 8 or 9 pounds, and you could, if you weren't, goodness.
There it is.
That's it.
0.6 ounces.
And that thing will dig?
Digs really well. In fact, this is really cool. You can dig with it the normal way, and you can flip it around and dig with the narrow side down, and it gives you about 4 times the amount of force on the dirt. So you use it this way for hard dirt, and then you scoop with it that way. Yeah, and that's just one thing leading to another. I did not plan that.
You did not find that.
I did not plan it. I found that. And in design, we have that happen all the time, where you start off doing one thing, and you suddenly find there's actually a pretty rich field of things to do, perhaps.
So that was a successful Kickstarter, and how much does that sell for?
$20. Yeah, on thetentlab.com, which is my normal website for that one, for that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, we'll be putting the websites and various other things on that. And you had mentioned that you might give some of my readers a special deal. It comes in different colors.
Yeah, it does. Most of your people would like black.
Black? You think so? Well, yeah. You had mentioned that that maybe preppers would be partial to cameo tints, and I don't really think that that's a big deal. And besides which, cameo is not suitable everywhere anyway.
Yeah, camo is always specific to the terrain, isn't it?
So that's $20, and you ship that out to anywhere in the United States, or do you ship it all over the world, or?
About 1/6 of my customers on Kickstarter were international customers. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I sold a lot to Australia. I know. A bunch of Canadians, UK, of course, Germany, some Japan, a couple of Singapore. It's actually kind of surprising. It's just that it really is light, and you get into a mindset of just wanting lighter weight. You at least check it out. The fact that it works really well is kind of almost a bonus for a lot of these people.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of deal could you make for readers of DFW Preppers?
Let's see. What did I say there?
You said something about free shipping, but I can't imagine that would cost much to ship.
One of these, usually we charge $3. I try and keep the shipping costs really reasonable. Our U.S. Postal Service is fantastic for little lightweight things like this, I gotta say. They've done amazing. Well, I don't know. What do you think they'd be interested in?
Well, you say that's $20?
$20, $23 usually with shipping.
So if you got free shipping, and maybe $1 off or something.
Okay. Well, how about a couple bucks off? Make it $18 even.
$18 even, and in order to get that, you have an order form with some comments on it.
This is where one of the limitations. The internet is so wonderful sometimes. The easiest way to do it is you just PayPal thetentlab@gmail.com. So that's that. Once you PayPal that email, that goes directly to the right spot, and then you have to put your address and your color choice in the comments.
Okay, so
Pretty easy.
With that, we'll put directions in my show notes, and then in the comments they can say, I read DFW Preppers or something.
Exactly.
I don't know how much that'll get you, but we can always try.
Absolutely.
Now, I saw some videos that you did.
Yeah.
And they were excellent videos about this new tent that you have that you're doing Kickstarter on.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe just an intro, because the readers could actually go and watch those videos, which are quite well done. And tell us why we should consider buying something like this. This is a 4-person tent, or
there's a 3 and a 4. One's has got a 6 foot by 8 foot floor. That's the 3, so it's quite a large tent. The 4-person is 8 foot by 8 foot, which is a pretty classic car camp size, 8 by 8.
And how high in the middle?
It is not a walk-in tent. Its height on the big one goes up to 56 inches, so it's pretty tall by, well, it's very tall by any kind of carry-it-yourself standards. But as far as walking in, which is really one of the splits, because I've made a lot of car camping tents as well. This is not everyone's classic car camping tent. Mm-hmm. If you go and you get a tent that's tall enough to walk in, it becomes very difficult to make it strong enough to stand up to a real freak wind. Mm-hmm. So right off the top, if you want to be able to have a tent you can leave up in a camp, while you're out doing something else. Hunters have this problem too. You've got to suddenly make your tent, if it's tall, it's suddenly basically got to be a full winter strength tent. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult. This one's kind of the opposite, where I'm assuming that people are going to not want to walk into it. You bend over to go into it, and you're going to be sitting and lying down, obviously, and things like that. So it's a little different style. I call it the light and fast style of car camping. So very much where you're going to be setting it up and taking it down probably every day in a different camp. You want something that's quick, that stows really well. You can have one of these things down before the camp next to you can figure out how to refold their camp kitchen. I mean, it really is funny. As soon as you start getting into the bigger things where you walk in, well, the next thing that'll occur to you is when you're lying there on the floor looking up, you go, why am I sleeping on the ground? So you get a cot. And it just keeps going and going. And suddenly you've got to have your own trailer to do this thing. It just gets crazy. So the whole more thing really, I think, eventually is sort of self-defeating. So the other way is more of a backpacking style, and this tent actually fits into that extremely well.
And for backpacking, you want real light. So how much do these things weigh?
7.5 and 8 pounds roughly. So not what you. Well, you're splitting it up. They are 3 and 4 person tents. So if you're splitting it up, that's pretty reasonable. They're definitely valuing things like being able to anchor the tent, having it strong, and having it be really, really livable and nice inside. And that came from the original emphasis was to try and make a tent that young families could enjoy and use, because it's really hard getting out with small kids for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah, I kind of remember those days.
It's really hard getting out, and if you do it, you need a reliable, fun time. I mean, that's really kind of the where the rubber meets the road. It's got to be a fun trip, no matter what. So
this thing is less than 9 pounds.
Yeah, much.
How big is it? How big is the folded up tent?
The big one is about 9 inches by 23.
So you could attach that to the bottom of your pack without a whole lot of trouble.
Very easily. It's a very reasonably sized tent. The bulk really does drop quite a bit. These are some pretty fabulous fabrics, I have to say. They're not quite as light as the nylons, but in their own right, they've got a lot going for them.
Now, you mentioned in your videos that you have a completely new pole. or
Yes.
pole material that is stronger and lighter than anything else that is on the market?
Well, this is a new development from DAC. They are the premier tentpole company. The owner is a good friend of mine, and he has been working in his back labs there, and he's making a tent he calls the PL pole. And what's going on with this pole is the material is his usual proprietary alloy. Okay, so it's not like he's developed a new alloy for this particular pole, but what he's done is he's lowered the wall thickness. So when you work with a tube,
Mm-hmm.
you're always finding that your highest strength to weight ratio comes with bigger tubes with thinner walls. So that's how you get the highest efficiency out of the structure. Mm-hmm. So that's just an engineering thing. So you run across a problem though. You get like a Coke can effect if you try and make something too big with the walls too thin.
So you can poke it and it dents.
Yeah, it'd be no good. So practically speaking, what has happened is that when you get into sizes ½ inch and bigger, your wall thickness has been much thicker than when are you making like 9mm poles and stuff. So 9mm poles from DAC, if you use their best pole, will be something like a 22 thousandths wall. As soon as you go to the bigger poles, it just gets so hard to make your wall thickness work that everyone's making wall thicknesses that are closer to like 35 thousandths, 40 thousandths. Mm. Pretty thick stuff. And if you go to the lower alloy materials, the 6000 series, then it gets even thicker still. Mm-hmm. So these poles have gone the other way because his process control is so exquisite. That's really the right word for it. It's fantastic process control. So he's taking poles, and the way you make them is you extrude. Okay, so you extrude a small pole, and then you do what's called drawing. So you actually neck it down and you pull it through a hole that's smaller than it is. So that's drawing. And you go and you do this multiple times. So you have to anneal it and do this and that. But every time you do something like that, you can imagine if there's any imperfection at all, it gets magnified. Mm-hmm. And you strongly risk ripping the thing apart. These are high forces. Mm-hmm. These polished tungsten carbide dies and stuff. So what the PL pole is he's managed to make the wall thickness the same as in his ultra light regular poles. He's down to 22 thousandths or so. Mm-hmm. Unlike those smaller diameters, it changes it. It doesn't flex quite the same way. It flexes in a way that I refer to as super elastic. It can take incredible amounts of bending before you damage it. It's weird. You can kind of feel it. If you're used to bending poles like I am, you kind of go, something's going on here. What is it? Mm-hmm. The net result is they're just amazing poles, and very, very few manufacturers in the world can even consider using them because they're like double the cost.
Now, when this tent is all done, what kind of retail price are you looking at?
This is a one-shot deal.
This is it. Yeah.
Unless there's such huge demand, this is it. I mean, I may, if this is successful, maybe next year I'll come up with enough changes to it to run another Kickstarter, or perhaps, in an ideal world, if it's just incredible, maybe we do pre-orders or something. But if you look on the Kickstarter site, I spell out exactly what the money goes to. And you can see right down there exactly how much I'm being paid for setting this entire thing up. Mm-hmm. Designing it, everything. It's right there.
Yeah, we'll put the URL in the video thing here.
Huh?
I guess to get more information, probably want to direct people to those really well-made videos that you did on your website. And the name of the website is?
You're talking about the one on YouTube channel, or the tent?
Actually, the tent something.
TheTentLab.com.
TheTentLab.com. And that's where you had several embedded videos on that showing the various different things. One of the interesting things that there was two things I wanted to ask you about. One is that wind tunnel thing that you did. Was there anybody in there when you did those?
No. That is a tunnel built literally on top of the pole factory. Jake made that wind tunnel. He did it to test tents in, and so he's got his staff, behind the glass walls as they set these things up and blow them down. And it's a fantastic service he offers for his clients, assuming they're willing to use the results.
So you went to him and you got him to run those tests for you.
Yeah.
And you did them from various different angles. And basically, how does that wind resistance compare to the competition?
Well, actually, it's about double the strength of a normal tent, right off the top. If you have a normal backpacking tent, well, as I've said, the features and the structure has been going down, down, down in terms of weight, and when you do that, of course, your strength is dropping too. So brands have explored, I would say, the lowest possible levels of tent strength. And that's often what's being sold now is very good selling tents. So the customer is very much driven to set them up in kind of protected hollows and things like that. They will blow down. A lot of them will blow down at 15, 20 miles an hour. Blow down, not just sort of move.
And yours was still staying up there at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, it doesn't really move very much until you hit at least 35.
Then it starts.
Then you get a little bit. Yeah. And this was the other thing is that, we wanted to promote, as a tent designer, I want to promote making better product and also better marketing materials so that you can talk about these things. And you have to go through and test a tent in all these different directions to really know what it's good for. If you do it just one way, that's been the typical thing, and they give you this nice big number, and things are going to get rough if the wind's just even a little off. Because the tents that do best have one pole that's like leaning into the wind, and you get this, and it's perfect. All the forces are balanced. But if it were to just go just a little bit more on one side than the other, it'd be boom. And when these tents blow up, you watch the videos and they just literally disappear. It's kind of comical.
Now, you also mentioned this was a 3-season tent. So you're implying that it's not really made for the winter.
That's right.
What would you have to do to it to make it winterable?
Probably get rid of the net top. That would be the first thing. The other might be to add just a little more pole, because the top is the way the roof is. It's got these pretty big facets, and they're really good angle, so they'll handle a fair amount of snow. But in winter, you really like to, get the support in the shedding. And
so even with that rain fly on it, it wouldn't handle a lot of snow.
It's pretty good. But what happens, the other thing that happens is any kind of netting in your roof really starts to sabotage your enjoyment. And the way it works is this way.
It's cold.
Well, it gets cold, and frost grows on the underside of the rain fly. It does it on all of them. That's perfectly normal. It might do it a little less on this tent even. But those frost crystals, when they're disturbed, break off and shower down on you. And they'll come through the net. And so you get this sort of snowy effect coming down. And I'll tell you, it is so annoying to be sleeping with your, like this much of your face showing, and to have cold snow fall on your face. So, I'm not a marketing guy. I'm just, I like to explain to people what things are for, what they're good for, what they're bad for. That's really what would probably annoy you the most.
Now, the other weather phenomenon that I think it might have a hard time with would be hail.
No, I don't think so. Hail is really not that hard. It's going to be really hard exactly where the hailstones hit the poles. Everywhere else, no problem at all.
Really? So it bounce off or slide down or what?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of, if you try and throw a ball at a tent, it goes thunk and falls down. It doesn't elastically bounce off it. So what happens is you'll just find that the fabric will kind of absorb these impacts, and it really doesn't change, or the tent hardly even notices them.
Really? So even like a 1-inch hail that's traveling at 250 miles an hour.
Now 250 could just go through everything. That's a little bit high.
Well, the terminal velocity is somewhere around 200, right?
What's that?
The terminal velocity, is around 200, isn't it?
Well, it depends a lot on your density, and I think you'll find ice is quite a bit lower terminal velocity. I don't know that number. We did just have hail, and we did have some 1-inch pieces actually, just like a week and a half ago. So we got some big chunks, and really the only thing they damaged was the plants. Our garden really got a pounding, but a tent wouldn't have cared.
Yeah. That's actually comforting to know, because hail that size could be injurious. Yeah.
Oh,
it could hurt you.
Oh yeah. It could, and that's where where it's hitting. When it hits on the pole, I don't think it's going to hurt it. I'd have to find out. I mean, none of these fabrics are none of the lightweight tents have fabrics that are appreciably abrasion resistant. But I don't think of hail as being abrasive per se. So, I don't know. Somewhere up there, it's probably going to be a problem, but mostly not.
Yeah, I'd like to see some information on that if you have some data, or you ever collect any data on that.
I'll be looking.
So I was looking over my notes. I think we pretty much covered most of the topics that we had in our list here. Oh, you had mentioned that nylon had a problem with moisture. And all this time that people have been using these lightweight nylon tents and not complaining about that. So what's that all about?
What do I make of it? That's a good question. Well, I think it's a good trait in any personality to try not to be too upset about something you don't think you can change.
Okay.
It behooves you to think that something else has happened when you see your tent get all saggy because it's wet. Now, once you know that it's the water and the nylon, I don't think you'll be so happy with it. But if you don't know that that's why, your assumption will be something like, well, it's just heavier, or it's stretched, or maybe the stakes came loose, or the cord, came a little looser. And so you've got all these possible excuses for what could happen. And it's only when you really, really do the experiment and find out what that, you can look these numbers up they're in all the plastics manuals. And you say, well, what does that mean? That you start to see, oh, this is what it is. That's what I've been putting up with all these years for a tent that sags. It's not me. It is in fact the nylon.
And the
which
nylon
is fine.
Actually absorbs water.
Yes. Yeah.
And
2 to 3%.
Your fabric does not?
Polyester does not absorb water appreciably. So down around the 0.1, 0.2%. Again, you can look it up in the charts. It's right there, but it's so hard to you read that it absorbs water, and it's like, well, okay, now it's wet. The fact that it grew, got just physically bigger, doesn't necessarily occur to you. But with these tents, even the small tents have at least one dimension that's 100 inches long. 2 or 3%, suddenly the thing is changing dimension this much. Well, that can cause lots of problems. If the whole thing starts to droop, then you've got condensation can drip on you. It's because there's always something on the underside of the rain fly, or very often.
Have you got a patent on this new tent of yours?
Oh, no. No. I have patents on lots of things. Not always mine, of course. They were a lot of the times the company I was working for. And it's just really, really, really hard to get a patent to pay off for you. It's almost impossible to monetize.
In my opinion, the patent system is just broken anyway.
Too many things are allowed.
Yeah.
And they did that at corporate behest, where basically you can tell that years and years, decades of lawyers from companies saying, well, we're the ones that should tell you whether it's obvious or not. that has taken its toll on these poor, often very intelligent patent examiners. They finally, at some point, they just give up. They go, okay, fine, we'll give it to you. Here's your patent.
Yeah, and what I've heard is a patent is basically just a license to go hunting or something.
For a lot of people, I think it is. For others, it is protection. Certainly, it's not to the point where it's a complete farce. But, in the tent industry, for instance, to get it to pay off would require tens of thousands of tents. And that's a very high number.
And you're only going to produce how many?
Of the Rugrat?
Yeah.
Geez, we need to make 300 to make any. If we had 350, I would be ecstatic. If we had 500, I would be dancing. Never mind that part.
Okay.
Yeah. It's I'm very aware of the price value equation that consumers have to work with here. And I completely understand if they say, I'm going to go with the $400 tent made out of nylon. It's lighter and it costs less, and that's my priority. And I go, that's what this is about, is finding out that. I think
See if you could sell into that market. And what's the price on these going to be?
600 and 665 are the two prices. They are
not bad.
For what they are, they're incredible. Again, I explained all that on the page there in ways that I've never seen before.
Well, and I'll be pushing it onto the folks that I talk to, the preppers, because I think that a nice, light, strong tent would be something that you would want to keep in your bug out bag.
Yeah.
Along with that really nifty little shovel.
The deuce of spades.
The deuce of spades.
That's what it's called, yeah.
Oh, so, okay, is there anything that we didn't cover before we wrap this up that you'd like to talk about?
I think we covered it pretty well. If anyone has questions, of course, my email and my contact info is all very easy to find.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes along with a link to that your website. And again, I'll say that I viewed the videos on that site, and they were really excellent.
I'm glad you liked it. I was really worried.
They're well done, and they do a really good job of selling the benefits of those tents, and probably even more so to somebody who is more aware of recent models of tents than I am. Like I said, my tent experience ended with those canvas pup tents back in the 60s.
Oh, wow. Yeah, things have gotten really nice since then. Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I do appreciate you taking the time to do this. We went a little bit over the 30 minutes that I promised you, but I think it was worthwhile. So
great.
Thank you very much, and if I have any other questions, I'll be emailing you, and it'll probably take me a week or two to get all this stuff up. I just bought a new video editing program that I'm not used to
you mentioned. Yeah. Okay, well that's great. I'm very happy to have talked to you, and I wish you well, and hope everything comes out on your end the way you want it.
Alrighty, I think that's a wrap.